Hey everyone, it is time for another weekly genealogy chat. So, hi, I'm Lisa Listen with Are You My Cousin? And I want to welcome you to this week's genealogy chat where we're going to be talking about building strategies and building systems for better genealogy research. So, it's a topic that I really love to delve into. It's something I am constantly trying to make better in my own research and I wanted to share some of that with you guys as we go. Love for it. If you don't mind popping in the comments, let me know where you're from, where you're listening from. That lets me get a sense of where everybody's from. It also lets me know that you guys can hear me, and that would be really helpful. I have a little bit of a different setup than previously, so I want to make sure that you guys can hear me. So if you don't mind popping that in there, that would be great. And if you're not, I'll switch out to a different microphone today. So if we are just meeting, as I said, I'm Lisa Listen with Are You My Cousin? And I write over at lisalisten.com. And if you are just finding me through Facebook, through the YouTube channel, you might want to, afterward this is over, head over to the website at lisalisten.com and explore, because you'll find tons of genealogy articles and posts over there to help you with your research. I think the last time I checked, I had somewhere around 300, a little over 300 posts. So there's a lot of info over there for you guys. Hey guys, oh, thank you so much, guys. I know this is great. You guys are chiming in, letting me know where you're from. I know you can hear it and everything. I got a new laptop last week before. And when you get a new laptop and you're trying to connect everything, and it takes a while to get your systems all back to where they were before. At least it does for me anyway. So we have Rosemary from Tampa. Hey, Kathy out in West Tennessee. Sherry from Memphis. Sherry from Mississippi. Hey, Cheryl from Mountain View, California. Hey, Pam. Good to see you from Asheville, Ohio. We have Asheville here in North Carolina too. Hey, Vicki, more Florida. Danny from more Oklahoma. Yay! Patty out in Oregon. Susan from Oregon. Oh, you've got the day off to see me live. Well, I'm so excited you could join me live today too. Hey, Flo from Oregon and Florida. So we have lots of Florida, Oregon, Ohio. Wonderful. So glad you guys are here. And I do appreciate a lot of the names I recognize week after week, and I do appreciate you guys showing up. It means a lot to me that you support what I do at Are You My Cousin? So let's see, a couple things going on over at Are You My Cousin this week and kind of this summer. As you know, I'm still on my virtual road trip with FindMyPast through their U.S. records. We are in Baltimore, so the new post went live this week, talking all about Baltimore ancestors and researching the records at FindMyPast. Now, those are some actually really interesting records. And Jen Baldwin from FindMyPast and I did a pre-recorded Facebook Live, I guess you can call it, on Monday. We weren't able to coordinate it and get it to where we could both be live, so we did a pre-recorded one, and I was in the chat. It is over at the FindMyPast Facebook page, where we talked a lot about Maryland ancestors, researching Maryland ancestors, looking at the records that FindMyPast have, which have a lot of the Catholic parish records, and those Catholic parish records in Maryland are unique in some ways in the fact that they documented, regardless of race, they documented births, marriages in their parish records. So you will find people who were enslaved persons. You will find enslaved persons. You will find free African Americans who are baptized or married in those records. So they're unusual, and it can be such a huge help for those of you who might be researching any of your Catholic ancestors in Maryland, but especially the African American population. So encourage you to check that out again and see what they have over there. So we have more people coming. Hey, Kathy from Ohio, and Deb and Betty Lou, wonderful, from Arkansas. So glad that you guys are all here today. Okie doke. So we've got the road trip is still going. We have one more place. So we'll be in Baltimore for 2 weeks, talking about all kinds of fun things and looking at the resources there. And then we are going to our final stop, which will be Philadelphia. So if you have any Pennsylvania, around the Philadelphia area, Quaker ancestors, you definitely want to continue with us on our road trip through those records over at FindMyPast. I've been surprised at what they have and have picked up lots of really good tips and clues from Jen as we've worked through these records. And I'm actually I'm in the FindMyPast records a lot. So I love being able to learn more and more and more. The biggest thing, guys, tips, and then we'll move on, is when it comes to FindMyPast, you have to think like a Brit, as Jen says. You have to think because they're British records. So you have to think from the British standpoint when you're getting into this. So, but that's a whole nother topic to talk about. Did announce this week, which I thought was super exciting for me. You may have gotten it in your emails, is that in June 2022, Are You My Cousin will be on a cruise. So we have an Alaskan cruise planned which will include genealogy lectures and all kinds of fun activities like that. And obviously the wonderful coast and seeing Alaska. I've never been to Alaska. I'm super excited. So a longtime reader of Are You My Cousin, Pat Sales, is coordinating all of that for me. She came to me and said, "Hey, Lisa, what do you think? Let's do this." So we're doing that. She's handling all the cruisy end of things, but you can check it out on my website and then follow up with any questions for her as far as the actual cruise itself with her. And we are still creating some of the content and stuff to go with that. So it'll consist of genealogy lectures and things like that as well. So super excited about that. And hope everything, and the COVID stuff settles down, so all that will actually happen. All right, guys, here we are. Let's talk about strategies and building strategies. And you may wonder kind of how I got into building strategies. And it's something that's been, as I've created research, I have not always been the most, what's the word I wanted to find here? I've not always been the most efficient researcher, particularly early on. And I think it's because I would get in a hurry and I would kind of jump ahead. And then I also I didn't have a really good system in place. I didn't have a good workflow in place. So that is something that I have been working hard on over the last few years as I create systems for myself in my research workflow, so to speak, if that's a word you're familiar with, to make myself more efficient. Obviously, being more efficient, I can save time. I'm more thorough because I'm not backtracking. I'm not wondering. I'm not missing things that are out there. And I'm not losing my records in my, buried somewhere in my databases. So that's sort of the background. And I got to thinking about this a lot recently over the last couple of years as it's interesting. I've always been on the road with my daughter when these thoughts hit me. It usually involves food, but I was recently, about early summer, I spent a week with my daughter at her home, and we explored a lot of the local restaurants and stuff in Knoxville, Tennessee area. And we stood in line a lot because, one, they were popular. Things were just opening back up. Things were very popular. And so we stood in line. The lines were long because, we were spaced out, socially distanced and spaced out. And so I had a lot of time to kind of watch what was happening. And I realized that we could get in these tremendously long lines for this, wonderful French creperie that I remember especially, yet it moved very quickly. And it was because they had the system down. Every time a customer hit that counter, it moved like clockwork, and everybody had their job, and everybody did it. And they literally just kind of moved that client right on through the line, right on through the process. And before you know it, we were sitting there eating these wonderful crepes. So I started thinking, well, this is kind of like my bakery experience when I was in Texas, and just everything works like clockwork. So why can't my research work like clockwork? Right. So I'm like, okay, this makes sense. Now, I don't come from a background, guys, of business, these things. So I didn't major in business in college. So these are things I am learning literally on the fly as I go. So I've had to really kind of learn how to do some of these things. And so I wanted to talk about my system. And then as we talk about it, I'd love to know if you have something, that you do that particularly keeps you on track. If you have a system that you find works well for you, feel free to drop it into the comments as we go. I'm happy to share those because I think we learn from each other back and forth. I learned from, from a French creperie shop. I learned things to go into my workflow, whereas, that doesn't necessarily inspire somebody else, but it worked for me. So anyway, what does it look like? So when I sit down to research, the very first thing is right off the bat is I look at my research plan. That is the number one thing I do every time I sit down to research. I look at my research plan. Now you're probably thinking, Lisa, do you really use a plan every time? Yeah, guys, I really do. And you guys, this is nothing new. You've heard me talk a lot about research plans, but that is what I do. So if I'm just beginning a project, the first step is to create that plan. Because when I create a plan, I really look at not just what is it I need to look for and what do I need to learn about the ancestor, but I'm going to include in that plan a piece that is, what do I need to learn about this location before I start researching my ancestor? So if that makes sense. So in other words, let's use Baltimore, Maryland, because I know I've been talking about that on the blog. If I have ancestors in Baltimore, Maryland that I'm struggling to find or I'm working to figure out, and maybe this is the first time I'm researching those ancestors. So I've not done a lot of Maryland research. The first thing I'm going to do as I sit down and create a plan is think about what is it I need to know? Well, I need to understand Maryland research. I need to understand a little bit about how it was formed as a state. I need to understand if there are any boundary line changes that are going to impact my research. I need to understand how religion played a part in my ancestors' life, and if it did, what was the history of the religion in that particular region? Where are the records kept? That's kind of a basic one. So that is something I do every single time. I don't have to think about it. I used to write all these steps down. When it comes to that, I don't even have to write that down because it's just become so much a part of who I am and what I do with it. So with each session, research session or research project, I sit down with that plan. Then once I have the plan, I can start searching for those needed records. And, I usually will divide them out by repository or database, depending on if I'm online or if I'm on site. And I search for the records, so get into and do that genealogy research. And then when I find that record, here's something that's really important. So I'm ready to search the records. I go in to find the records, and I've got one collection that I'm looking at. The first thing I do is I write down the source citation. Now, lightning might strike, but I'm not really concerned about all the, where the period goes and which comma goes where. But what I'm after is to make sure that I write it and that I am able to find that resource again. Now, if I'm going to write this up for publication, I'm going to be extremely careful about where I put, how I format it. But I'm less worried about the formatting of that I can't even talk today. I'm less worried about my getting the format right for my site as I am for that citation, as I am to get the information. I want to make sure I capture the information so I know where I found pieces of information and how to go back if I need to, or how, if somebody in the future looks at my research, they can return to that same source if they need to find something else, if they want to see it. So I do that when I find that document, or when I start researching in a record collection, I write that down. But when I find that document, I go ahead and do it up front because I can guarantee it. I am going to forget if I wait till I get done with the record, because by then my mind has gone, I found something great. I've got to go check this out now. And so if I wait, I am less likely to write that down. And then it kind of snowballs from there. So I always make sure I write that stuff down first before I get too far down the research road, just to be safe. So hang on one second. Let me get so. Okay, so let's see. Over in the comments, Betty says she could use strategies for when you get to a new database or library, and as you go find family records for generations. How do you go through all that and keep track of it? That is a wonderful question. I'm going to come right back to that in just a minute, Betty Lou, because I think that's a fabulous question. All right, so once I found the record, once I've documented okay, this is where it is, then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to read it and I'm going to analyze it. Hopefully I have time to analyze right then, but sometimes I don't. Sometimes I just have to get the record and go, but I try to do at least my initial analysis on the spot, because that can lead me to other records for where I'm at. But that's the fun, and this is the fun part, right? We all know that. That's what we love to do. And then if it's an online database, I'm going to go ahead and download it and file it away. Or if I'm on site, I'll do whatever they allow. So if it's typically if I'm at the North Carolina archives and it's a microfilm, then I just have to print it out and then I digitize it when I get home. They will make copies for me of original records. So if I have an original record that I want a copy of, I submit that request. Sometimes you can go other repositories, the microfilm readers will have a spot where you can insert your thumb drive and download it to your thumb drive, which is my favorite way to do it if possible. Just so it just saves me a step, but I get a copy of it. I download it or whatever needs to be done, and then I file it in my own file system. And then of course I add it to the family tree if applicable. So I do that every single time. Those are the steps that I go through. I don't even have to, again, I actually have this all written down. I wrote it down for myself so I wouldn't forget, but I actually, now it's so ingrained, it's a habit that in itself has saved me a lot of time. Then this is a really important piece of it, guys, before I actually leave that record, leave that research time period, whether it's 30 minutes or whether it's 2 or 3 hours, I'm going to review what I found, just a quick, what did I find today, kind of wrap up, see where I was, and I'm going to update my research plan. And what you'll notice is that I start my sessions in my research plan and I finish it in the research plan. And that is very intentional, because I need to stay clear on what it is I'm looking for. And I need to be clear on where I need to start again, because that's the worst, right? When you stop and you come back, you can't remember where you were when you research. So I always end it in that research plan, because I make a note as to, start with such and such record, year, whatever year range I'm looking at. So it just keeps me going forward. So that's the plan I do. And again, write it down if you want to. That always helps. All right. So I want to come back to Betty Lou's question. So she's asking, actually, I think I can put it on the screen. Let's see if I can do that and get fancy today, guys. There we go. So she's using strategies for she needs strategies for when you get to a new database or library. And as you go, you find family records for generations. And how do you go through all of that and keep track of it? And let's see, she's got a follow-up. Hang on. So for example, you get the opportunity to look at a church or vital records for your foreign-born ancestor, and the record collection spans 50 to 100 years. Oh, wow, that's amazing. Well, after you do the genealogy happy dance, what you do, so a lot of what I will do when I'm first getting to that new database, I want to know kind of what they have. So I'll do some research up front before I get to that major database, or whether it's a repository, and just so I know what they have. So I know what to ask for, I know what they have, and I can save a little bit of time that way. When I'm presented with that much information at a time, you're right, it is very overwhelming. Hopefully what you can do is get copies of the register. If you're finding it like that, then you could actually get copies of the register. I don't know how if it's just a register and you just go through each one and you're finding all of these generations, or how it's set up, but I would see what you could do. I usually start with getting the information for the main research project. So if I was looking for a certain ancestor, a certain couple, I definitely make sure I get that first. But then I talk to if it's an on-site repository, I would talk to them and say, how can I get copies of these records? So that then you can come home and get them into your family tree database and process them at home. If it's an online database, it's not so hard, because you can build your tree and just, as you build that generation back, then I would, start with the first generation, and then I would pull their records and I would attach them there. And then each time as I go back through the generations, I would take them individually and pull them in one at a time. It's it's time consuming, but if it's online and you have access to it, you don't have quite the rush than if you're on site and their original records. Then I would talk with the archivist and say, hey, what can I do? These are all my folks. I need to be able to, and I need this information. How can I go about getting it in the best way? So typically that's what I'm going to do, and it's possible they'll digitize it for you. I would just ask kind of where you're at on that with that particular thing. So I hope that helps. If anybody wants to add anything to that, please do. I actually would love to be able to have that happen to me. And when you've got a foreign-born ancestor and you're looking at these record collections, then perhaps they are overseas. So if you're doing that overseas, that can get a little bit trickier because you may not know the language quite as well. And so again, I would seek help there on site to see if they can help you pull all those records. So then you can, once you get home, you can start adding them to your family tree with that kind of thing. Couple of the sites, I get questions sometimes about what types of tools do I use to keep myself organized and going. So I actually do use a couple of different things. So I have used Trello in the past. I've used it quite extensively, where I can create timelines using Trello, as well as research plans on Trello. It's a project management site that's out there that's very, very popular. I also have used Asana, Asana, which I actually like a lot. I'm actually finding things I like about it that are even more so than Trello. But I tend to use Trello for my ancestors. I tend to use Asana for my business, just the way they work. One seems to work a little better for me than otherwise. Another way to kind of keep straight is that, and sometimes look in your family tree software. So I use Family Tree Maker, but I feel sure Roots Magic and all the others have these functions as well. I just don't have as much experience with them, but a lot of them will have checklists and areas where you can make like research plans for your ancestors. So use your software that you already have. It'll kind of keep everything consolidated for you that way. And then a couple of the other things that I've done is when I need something that's going to, so for instance, when I needed a research workflow that worked for me because I was failing at all the other ones I found online, I just created it. And I literally drew it by hand on my paper, and then I put it together online because I found something that worked for me. I've done the same thing with checklists. So if you research in a certain area frequently, or if you're starting, say, some overseas research and it's kind of new and you want to make sure you don't miss records or miss pieces of it, create your own checklist. Take that time up ahead, create your checklist, and then you can keep it in like a Google Drive folder so that you've always got it right there. I do that with repositories that I research in a lot, or I should say not so much repositories, but areas. So counties or states that I research a lot in, they have some of their own unique records, and I will create a checklist for myself that I can use so that I can clearly look at what they have. I can quickly go, what it is. Yes, yes, yes. Nope, don't need to look at that one. But at least I know I'm being thorough in my research for that particular ancestor in that area. So I do that. And then, of course, I use Google Drive. That's pretty much where I store most everything these days. Google Drive, Google Folder, Google Drive, Google Photos. So here's a tip that I do, guys. I don't know if this is helpful to you, but one of the strategies that makes me a better researcher and to make sure it helps me fill in gaps, certainly I do the timelines, which you guys I've talked about before, but I also write reports to myself. Okay. So if I have a particularly troublesome ancestor that I'm really struggling to get through, or I'm trying to process all the information they have, I will actually sit down and write a research type report to myself where I list out everything I found, and I have to justify how it all works together. and I have to resolve every, what are the outstanding questions and what does this bring up? And does it solve the question? Does it not solve the question? And why not? When I do that, I know that sounds a little tedious, but that is a strategy that I use because it helps me identify the gaps. It helps me identify the weak points in my own research and where I need to research more. And those I actually do keep stored in Google, a Google Drive folder for that. So that's what I like to use there. So again, it's all about strategies. It's all about what works for you. And if you guys are interested in more of that, I'd love for you head over to the website. There is a post I wrote on that. It's an unusual post, but I think it's one of my favorite because it really talks a lot about strategies and using strategies to keep your research streamlined and go forward. And let me pop that in the comments. I can't cut and paste and talk at the same time. Okay, so there it is. I've just popped it in there. It's actually a, here, I'll put it on the screen too, because I've gotten fancy. It's actually called, let me see what it's called. It's called While Standing in Line for the Best Cupcake Ever. What Standing in Line for the Best Cupcake Ever Taught Me About Genealogy Research. And it was exactly about this, guys. It was about strategies and systems that make me a better researcher and a more efficient researcher. So some of this will go a little more into detail over there as well. So I think that'll help you guys out. All right, so if you are struggling with strategies and just being efficient, check out that post. I think that will give you some it'll kind of tie everything together that we've talked about here for that kind of for using strategies and creating your own workflows. The most important thing that I could tell you, and one of the biggest things that I see that mistakes that genealogy researchers make, is that we get in too big of a hurry. Okay, we find that ancestor and we keep moving on. We're not doing a full analysis to really fully understand what we have at times. And then we end up backtracking. And of course, we end up going down the rabbit trails. So, and when I get on the rabbit trails, you guys are going to think I'm absolutely nuts. I have little yellow stickies and I have them right beside my computer so that if I'm researching my family and I'm seeing other collateral lines that I want to research, or I find something else that's important, I write it down and then I keep moving on because I will go off on that tangent in a heartbeat. So I always write it down and where it is, and I keep moving on because otherwise I'm in trouble. I don't know if you guys are too. I think a lot of genealogy researchers are. I think a lot of us do get into those rabbit trails. So anywho, there you have it. Next week, we will have, we'll be doing our DNA chats again next week. So I'd love for you to join me then and head over to the site. You can check out the strategies, the genealogy research strategies post. The latest post over there has to do with our Baltimore, Maryland ancestors and researching those. I think you would really get a lot out of those as well. And be sure to look at that because at the bottom there, I will share a lot of other resources and a lot of other repository type things that would be beneficial places to contact or visit if you can physically go there to help with your research, to add some of the social history aspects to your research up there in Baltimore. So love for you guys to do that. And that's all I've got for you guys. I will see you next week. I hope you guys have enjoyed it. Kathy said when we're with the next Baltimore episode. So we just have the one live that's going live, and we have, I'm not sure if we're doing another one next. We just have the one that we did, and we don't have another one scheduled for Baltimore. But watch the Facebook group. I'm going to probably dig into more of those Baltimore records and see what else I can come up with. I'd like to do another one, maybe impromptu, Kathy. So just keep watching the page and watch your emails, and I will put that out there because I can't remember off the top of my head. Pam. Oh, thanks so much. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Yes, happy digging. Happy digging for those ancestors, right? Definitely. So Look forward to seeing you guys next week. Bye, guys.